Kings and queens must have their crowns, and the British monarchy has some of the best. Familiar the world over, these priceless jewels are worn by monarchs, but belong to the state. But the Queen does have a vast personal jewellery collection, estimated to be worth in excess of £30 million. The glimpses we catch of it worn on grand public occasions are only the tip of the iceberg. Behind this private collection lie extraordinary tales of lottery winnings, extravagant gifts, and spectacular gems gleaned from a world empire over generations. The most magnificent set of jewels in the Queen's own collection are the Cambridge and Delhi Durbar emeralds, worth over £2 million. How the Duke of Cambridge and his wife, the Queen's great-great-grandmother, acquired 40 of these gems in 1818 was pure fluke.
They went to Frankfurt on a tour, and there was a lottery for a charity. And the Duchess of Cambridge decided that, yes, she would buy some tickets, and actually won, and was presented with this brown box full of these emeralds. And then subsequently they were made up into various parures, various pieces of jewellery. One most famous piece is the one that the Princess of Wales wore on as a headband when in Australia. I believe it was done that way, originally intended to wear around the neck, but because of sunburn it was decided that it would be easy to put around the top.
In 1897, the Cambridge emeralds were inherited by the Queen's great-uncle, Prince Francis of Teck.
He was a real ne'er-do-well. He was a great gambler, you know, he had a bit of this Irish blarney in him, and he showered jewels on his mistress, and Queen Mary, his sister, wasn't having any of that. He died rather suddenly, and she was horrified to find that the Cambridge emeralds, the family emeralds, had been given to his Irish mistress. Off she went, can't you just imagine, her tiara on her head, the grand Queen Mary, and she got those emeralds back. And I often think of it when I see the Queen wearing them today, that those jewels have been around a bit.
I'm sure that it will come, and that South Africa has...
In 1911, King George V and Queen Mary were crowned as India's Emperor and Empress at the famous Delhi Durbar.
Can you imagine one of those Indian celebrations when people arrive in elephants on howdahs? When I say people, I mean Maharaja kind of people. And when there's somebody fanning you from behind on this hot day and you're sitting under some extraordinary throne, probably the throne itself is studded with jewels. This is what Queen Mary and King George V went through at the beginning of their reign, when India was the most important part of the future Commonwealth. And the Maharajas came up to them carrying these incredible jewels as presents. Queen Mary received emeralds in her own right from the Indian people, and she had those made up into fantastic jewels. She mixed them with the Cambridge emeralds to make different parure. And now, of course, Diana was given one of the emerald sets, and Prince Charles bought her an Art Deco emerald and diamond bracelet to go with it. Like so much he didn't know about his young wife, he didn't know she didn't like emeralds.
For a visit to Rome in 1980, the Queen wore a favourite diamond and pearl tiara from her personal collection. Again, she'd inherited this from her grandmother Queen Mary, the great architect of the Windsor family jewels. She'd bought this magnificent piece from the daughter of the Grand Duchess Vladimir of Russia, Tsar Nicholas's aunt, who'd had to flee the Bolsheviks. The Russian Revolution helped fuel Queen Mary's obsession with acquiring jewels.
When the Russian royal family was deposed, they basically had very little money left and they had to sell their jewels. And Queen Mary was able to pick up quite a lot of the Russian family jewels. She paid about £2 million in modern-day prices.
Members of the Russian royal family who were down on their luck and had nothing but their jewels to support themselves sort of sold them privately. They weren't very practical people. The Grand Duchess Olga, she was a woman who'd never had to deal with money. And of course it seems like a godsend when Queen Mary comes along saying, let me sort it out for you. I know this jeweller, and of course I'd love to have them. And she took the pick of the Russian jewels. Whether she ever paid for them in full at the proper price is very doubtful, although I think a lot was given in kind to these exiled Russian relatives. They had grace and favour homes rather as some of the minor royals do today. So perhaps there was a trade-off there. But in real jewellery terms, Queen Mary did not pay the full whack.
In 1995, the Queen's official visit to Russia posed the very delicate problem of what jewels she should wear, if any. How awkward that she was scheduled to visit the tombs of her royal cousins, the Tsars, for the first time, when thanks to her grandmother, Queen Mary, she had the pick of their best jewels at home in a vault. Her Russian trip included visits to Moscow and to a gala performance at the Bolshoi Ballet. During the stopover, it was a deliberate choice to wear the sapphire and diamond parure that she'd received as a wedding present from her father, rather than choosing any of her inherited Russian jewels.
As the jewels had come from Russia under sort of slightly, perhaps, mysterious circumstances, the Queen didn't want to upset anybody, so she kept away completely from all the Russian jewels, and in fact wore the sapphire and diamonds at the Bolshoi Ballet. When I was actually there, the Bolshoi Theatre, when the Queen walked into the box, and it was a 10-minute standing ovation, and she could not believe that people were appreciating her in this way. She was absolutely overwhelmed. And I remember talking to her about it a week later, and she said, "You did not think I was overdressed?" And I said, "You know, it was absolutely wonderful. People loved you. It was terrific."
In 1936, the future of the British monarchy was threatened when the Queen's uncle, King Edward VIII, abdicated to marry the twice-divorced Wallis Simpson. This constitutional crisis also led to jewels that would normally have swelled the Windsor family collection being taken into exile. The flawless stone in Wallis's engagement ring was half of one of the greatest emeralds in the world and had once been worn by a Mughal emperor. The king had ordered the jeweller Cartier to make the ring, and as a regular customer was quoted as special price. £10,000 is the equivalent of $500,000 today. Throughout the marriage, he celebrated their relationship by giving his wife numerous jewels to create a magnificent collection.
Most of the jewels she had were either bought for her by the besotted future Duke of Windsor, or otherwise they were made up from jewels that he had been given in India, that is, raw stones. But they weren't actually jewels that, say, Queen Victoria had worn.
This was a collection to rival even the Queen's.
When the Duke of Windsor died, it went to the Duchess, and thereafter the bulk of it, as far as I understand, went to charity for AIDS research. They fetched a phenomenal price, something like 10 times more than was expected, because they'd been owned by the Duchess of Windsor, because there'd been all this royal romance connected to them.
One of Wallis's favourite jewels, her ruby necklace, fetched over £1.5 million from a mystery buyer at the Geneva auction in 1987, when the whole collection was sold for a total of £27 million. Known buyers included the dress designer Calvin Klein, who bought 4 items for over £870,000, Aaron Spelling, the producer of the television soap Dynasty, who purchased a necklace for his wife, and Elizabeth Taylor, who bought the Prince of Wales's diamond brooch for £350,000, now worth in the region of £1 million.
The Duchess of Windsor's jewels, of course, were sold up for charity. Now, that's something that I don't think we'll be seeing for other members of the royal family. But some pieces did manage to sneak their way back into the royal family. You know, Princess Michael of Kent, who befriended the Duchess before she died, I think maybe she felt a little bit of an outsider and therefore they've had something in common. And she received as a gift a pair of panther earrings, those famous Cartier earrings. And she wears them very occasionally, but not, I would imagine, in front of the Queen.
After the loss of the Duke of Windsor's jewels, the Queen seemed very wary of risking any more dilution of the family collection, only giving Diana the Cambridge emeralds and the lover's bow knot tiara as wedding presents. which had belonged to Queen Mary and was a design she'd copied.
You know, Queen Mary had all these relatives strung out through Germany and Russia, and she used to go in the summer. It was called the gathering of the royal mob. They used to kind of go on their summer holidays together, a very upmarket Butlins or Club Mediterranee with just members of the royal family. And then, of course, they all dressed for dinner in those days, tiaras, the whole bit. And Queen Mary then would have seen jewels that she loved. And the bone-up tiara was something that she had copied by Garrard just before the First World War and the Russian Revolution, 1914, using jewels that, pearls especially, that she had been given as a wedding present, but had it made for herself, gave it to the Queen, who has hardly worn it, and then the Queen gave it to Princess Diana as the future Queen.
Garrard has been the crown jewellers since 1843. Here at their Regent Street workshops, high-quality gems are turned into jewellery worth hundreds of thousands of pounds. In 1888, Garrard created Queen Alexandra's Kokoshnik tiara, now in the Queen's private collection and encrusted with 488 diamonds. Many of the Queen's private pieces are kept in Garrard's vaults, and they have a running contract to alter or clean items as required. In 1981, Prince Charles paid Garrard just over £28,000 for Diana's engagement ring. But Garrard's main job is to maintain the state crown jewels. These include the King George IV's state diadem crown. In 1862, Queen Victoria is pictured wearing it on an early postage stamp.
George IV's coronation, the new crown was made, and he was under strict orders from Parliament what he could have in his crown. He then decided that he would have flower bouquets between the Maltese crosses. The flower bouquets represent England, Scotland and Ireland. He didn't actually wear it for his coronation because it was considered to be too feminine.
Queen Victoria had it set with diamonds and pearls from her collection, but the Hanoverian kings were hard up.
Originally, it would have been set with semi-precious stones that would have been hired from the jewellers for the coronation, because in those days they couldn't afford to have crowns and diadems set with real stones and keep them. So the jewellers came in and they were, all the jewels were hired and sent back afterwards. If the jewels were left in the crowns, the sovereign would have pawned them, hocked them to pay gambling debts or, as turned out, mistresses in those days.
Today, the Queen wears the diadem to go to the annual state opening of Parliament.
She wears it leaving Buckingham Palace, travelling in the coach to the House of Lords. She then walks up the grand staircase into the robing room where that crown, the diadem, is removed, and she then puts on the more important Imperial State Crown.
This is the most valuable state crown of all. It contains the world's second largest cut diamond, weighing 317 carats and worth between 80 and 100 million pounds. Altogether, it has 2,800 diamonds. The crown's total worth is incalculable. Every monarch has it altered to fit.
It's basically the head size. The crown would be altered. The Imperial State Crown, as I said, is the only one that's ever altered. That is altered to fit the head size. It's rather like a hat. It's rather like having a hat made. We often refer to these crowns as hats, like the same with diadems and tiaras. They are quite humorously referred to as hats, or part of the kit.
Queen Victoria preferred to wear a smaller, lighter crown that she had had made in 1870. This only weighs 4 ounces.
Queen Victoria suffered migraines in later life, and she found that the crown's far too heavy. That's why we at Garrard made the small, very, very small crown for her to wear. And she always wore it at the top of the head or at the back on the bun, with or without the arches. But the Imperial State Crown would have always been there as a symbol. Say the opening of Parliament or state occasions, it would have been there on a cushion by the side of her.
When Queen Elizabeth came to be crowned, changes had to be made for her too.
Imperial State Crown was in fact altered by Garrard for the coronation in 1953. The head size was adjusted and the arches were made lower, mainly because to make it look more feminine and to reduce the weight slightly. Not forgetting this weighs 2.5 pounds.
For the annual state opening of Parliament, the Queen wears Queen Victoria's 28-diamond collet necklace and earrings. Victoria appropriately wore them for her Diamond Jubilee portrait in 1897, and they continue to be an established part of the crown jewels.
The diamond collet necklace that was made, Queen Victoria had made, along with the diamond drop earrings. These were made from diamonds that she took from a garter star and a ceremonial sword, and they were added to the royal collection, or the crown jewel collection, in 1901. The diamond drops that are on the earrings and the drop on the bottom of the collet necklace did actually come from the Timor ruby necklace. It was given to Queen Victoria in 1851 by the East India Company. They now form part of the crown jewels.
For the Queen's marriage to Prince Philip in 1947, she wore a tiara from the state collection, lent to her as something borrowed by the Queen Mother, who still acts as its royal custodian.
The tiara that Princess Elizabeth wore is known as the Hanoverian tiara, and it was in fact designed and made in 1830 for Queen Victoria. It was made of old diamonds from the time of George III, and it was creating this wonderful, quite spiky tiara, quite high, which can also be worn as a necklace, interestingly enough. The royal family are very, very, very good with their jewellery. They can be worn for lots of different things. Anyway, Queen Victoria had it made in 1830 and left it to the crown, and Queen Mary wore it. There are pictures of Queen Mary wearing it. And then Princess Elizabeth wore it for her wedding because it was lent to her by her mother.
As far as the public knew, the day went exactly as planned. But behind the scenes, the bride's two main pieces of jewellery had both created anxious moments.
Because on Princess Elizabeth's wedding day, two unforeseen things occurred. One was that the beautiful Hanoverian tiara, diamond tiara, actually the frame broke, which is a nightmare situation for anybody. But of course, unlike anybody, she did in fact have the court jeweller standing by, but in his workshop. And he had to be sent for double swift to come and mend the thing. And I think she was very, very nervous and had to be reassured by her mother. And also, she wanted to wear the double row, the famous double row of pearls, which had been given to her by her parents, by her father, I think in particular, on her wedding day. And they were on display with the rest of the royal presents, which was extremely awkward. So in a London which was paralysed with traffic problems, her newly appointed private secretary, John Colville, was dispatched across London to get this priceless pearls and somehow get them back to Buckingham Palace. But he couldn't get back. Once he'd actually persuaded them to give him the pearls, I imagine sharp words were spoken, he had to commandeer one of the royal limousines belonging to King Haakon of Norway to somehow get through and give them to the bride-to-be.
On Princess Anne's wedding day in 1973, the Queen Mother again lent the Hanoverian fringed tiara. It had now been worn by 3 generations of royal Windsor brides. The Queen Mother's wedding present to Diana was a sapphire and diamond brooch which Diana subsequently had made into a pearl choker. In auction, this could sell for over £2 million. But Diana's most valuable wedding present is now worth in the region of £5 million.
I think a jewel that everybody identifies with Diana because of those blue eyes of hers are the sapphires, and especially that socking great sapphire that she was given by a member of the Saudi royal family as a wedding present.
When Diana and Charles married in 1981, the tradition of having a public display of royal wedding presents was discontinued on the orders of the Queen. Royal jewels are now only ever seen when in use.
I'm sure this single-bar electric fire syndrome comes into play when it comes to displaying royal wedding gifts. We're supposed to believe that the Queen is a very thrifty, parsimonious person who doesn't really have very much money. And the same is true of the next generation.
Diana had to fight hard to get her divorce settlement from Charles. Perhaps she threatened to sell off some of her sapphires and diamonds, such as those given to her by the Sultan of Oman, worth £2 million. The Queen would hate such a breaking of ranks.
The Queen has always been concerned that the younger members of the royal family don't ever appear flash. We're a long way from a bicycling royal family, but it doesn't do really, does it, to show the incredibly beautiful jewels which are around in the royal family and which are given as presents. The only equivalent today of the Indian Maharajas who showered Queen Victoria and the future Edward VII with gifts, their equivalent today are these Saudi princes who are real, they have fiefdoms. They have the possibility to pop into Asprey or Garrard or have made up fantastic jewels, pay for them, and give them to the Queen or to Princess Diana, who's had them.
Unlike many of her royal predecessors, Diana isn't obsessed by expensive jewellery.
Diana doesn't wear many jewels. She really likes the fun of jewellery, and to her that means fashion jewellery, costume jewellery, much more than the real thing. And she doesn't really wear those long necklaces that sort of just hang there and fill in the neck of a dress. It's not her style at all. Look at the way, very funny and amusing way, she's hung pearls, false pearls, down the back of a low-back dress. That's the kind of thing she likes. And you know, she would have had a soulmate in Queen Alexandra, who herself, can you believe, in spite of her great collection of jewels, had false pearls and a lot of false stones to make amusing things for herself. And there's a funny story about how, when she was riding one of those coaches, her pearl choker suddenly split, and the courtiers in panic scrabbled and tried to pick up every single pearl that was rolling away. Queen Alexandra sat there very serenely, as well she might have done, because they were all fakes.
When it came to the marriage of Prince Andrew to Sarah Ferguson, the Queen again held back on lavishing family heirlooms on an outsider.
I often think about the wisdom of the Queen as a mother and a grandmother and a head of the family. It always puzzled me that Diana wasn't given more royal jewels. And certainly Sarah, the Duchess of York, got nothing. I mean, she got pieces that were bought at Garrard's.
Sarah's order from Garrard still cost £60,000. While the precious family jewels remained in the palace vaults, this suite of diamond clusters was newly acquired for Sarah.
She didn't give them because she suspected right from the start, maybe, that these marriages were going to be difficult. And the jewels perhaps were held back to be given for 10th wedding anniversaries or 20th or 25th wedding anniversaries. And those girls haven't reached them, have they?
Like her grandmother, Queen Mary, the present Queen takes the safeguarding of family heirlooms very seriously.
I'm sure the Queen feels that her jewels, like her art treasures, are something that she is the guardian of while she is Queen, but they will be passed to Prince Charles. Sadly, it seems as though he may not have a wife to wear them, which is very interesting because it means that those jewels might, in the end, the ones that the Queen is wearing now, kind of be cobwebbed, mothballed for 100 years like a Sleeping Beauty's, and then emerge in yet another generation, perhaps for Prince William's future bride.
It must be a comforting thought to know that if hard times ever hit the Windsors like the Russian Romanovs, there'll always be the family jewels to fall back on.